Today we're going to do a Rizoma rear set install. And you don't even really need to take this assembly off. All you need to do is undo this bolt. It's actually a 5mm Allen on this side, 10mm wrench on the back side to hold the nut, and it's a nylock nut. And then this entire assembly right here will replace that, so you can do it in one shot. Okay, these rear sets actually come with their own bolt, so which replaces the nylock nut with a, I think it's castellated is what it's called, when it has a metal ring in there. So you will not reuse that hardware. It also comes with hardware for the mounting points on the bracket as well, so we'll adjust these later once I actually get everything on and installed and double check the distances here. Check this distance. I think I've got it shrunk up all the way, so that might be fine, but you've got adjusters here and here to lengthen out the rod. That raises and lowers the foot peg, but we can also adjust here 360, and this has 4 points of adjustment as well, so I'm going to get the foot pegs on next. Okay, now when you do the foot peg, you want to make sure that the washer actually goes inside like that, and then that lets you actually bolt the foot peg on like so. Okay, now keep in mind as you're doing this install, a lot of these parts are billet aluminum, so you're not going to want to be cranking this bolt down super hard. You just want it to be nice and snug. And the nice thing is this pure part actually turns a little bit. See? So you can adjust this angle of flip back. So I want mine to go back a little bit like that. So once you're done with that, then you can just put the cap on the end. These little pad ends do go in pretty stiff, so you're going to want to take a rubber mallet and get it set so that it's kind of pretty even, and then just give it light taps and it'll just pop right in. The last step is on these top two nuts, or bolts, you want to make sure that you've got 25 Newton meters of torque. I already did that a little bit ago. And you should be done with this side. Okay, on this side you're going to have to take off your exhaust. You need a 12mm on the back side, and I believe that is 5mm on the front side. Yep, 5mm on the front side. And then you also have to take off whatever connection you've got down there, usually a 10 to 12mm wrench as well. You're going to need an 11mm for this rear brake sensor that activates your rear brake and goes to the ECU. So 11mm on that. Okay, now once you get these two bolts out, you can see back there, you got your master cylinder, and there's the push rod that pushes into the master cylinder. You just gradually, nicely pull it out. And now you can access the two bolts to take the reservoir off. Okay, and you're going to reuse the stock hardware if you've got the stock mounting bracket for your master cylinder reservoir. Okay, now before you do anything on the brake side, you're going to want to get out the extra bracket that's been provided that looks a little odd, and that is actually, if you follow the lines, the two bottom bolts, the long ones, go through the master cylinder and the bottom two holes of the bracket. It's kind of an upside down L. The right hand bolt goes into the existing bracket, and the top hand small bolt goes behind. So you're going to want to do that top bolt first and bolt the bracket onto the rear mount that the master cylinder went onto originally. And when you get it all assembled, the spacers go behind the master cylinder so the bolts can actually fit up and they don't hit that top bolt. When you're done, master cylinder is at kind of a downward angle now. Not a lot of room up there, but it's interesting. And that lets you fit the rod in and the whole thing slide up. So there you go. Alright, now in order to get clearance to get the plunger slid in there, you're going to have to take this off. Otherwise you're going to be bumping up against the mid pipe. So use some pliers and just yank up on them. You'll get the slips right off. Okay, now before you install this into your brake master cylinder, you're going to want to put some grease on this plunger so that it doesn't get bound up. You can be real liberal with it. That'll help your rear brake operate quite a bit better. You won't have to worry about it sticking as much. Alright, now the screw back in here takes a 6mm wrench on the, man, if I could even get it in there. There's a little flat spot on either side. You're going to have to turn it with your hands like that and then get the 6mm wrench on it when the flat sides are visible. Oh, there it is, right. Like that. So you can see the wrench in there on it. And gradually screw it in and out until you get the right distance so it's just barely touching the plunger inside the master cylinder. And then when that's done, you just turn the nut. That takes a 13mm to tighten up the nut. And don't go too ham-fisted because you'll end up stripping it out and have to order parts from Rizoma. So, and once that's done, the pedal is nice and firm. I just need to test. You want to walk your bike around and pressing on the lever to make sure it's exactly right, but this is one of those test and tweak things. Here are the torque specs for the various bolts, just for reference. So the front adjuster for the peg is 9 to 11 Newton meters. The bracket that holds on the actual rider peg is 22 to 24 Newton meters. Then the two bolts are different than the Ducati spec. They're actually 22 to 24 Newton meters. Ducati's is 25, but it's plus or minus 10%, so pretty close. And it says to grease all of them, which is what I did. I used anti-seize compound. Now they actually have a recommendation to put medium thread locker on the two bolts that hold this on. And you're going to reuse your bracket for the exhaust. And you can see that my Competition Works can actually is getting a little bit bent from the shortened slips. I've also got these Akrapovic springs because the slips were shortened up, so I had to get shorter springs. And it's quieted down a bit. The springs don't make as much noise with the rubber grommets, but that should give you an idea of the torque spec. Now if you want to adjust this and change it to the different positions, there's actually a nut on the back side you have to get to. So you'll probably have to take the bracket off in order to get that broken loose, because there's not a lot of room right here. There's not really room to get a socket back there unless you were to take the rear brake this screw out. So I'm going to try that right now and get mine set up. Okay, so it's a 14mm on the back side to get the bolt loosened up. You're going to use this 5mm to adjust the height of the peg, and then it's a little 3mm to take this off. It's a spline drive, so I'll show you that in a sec. So when you take that little cover off, it's on splines, and you can gradually, maybe not, you've got to take the bolt all the way out in order to get the spline off. That's cool, so you don't have to worry about it coming out of adjustment. So with this bolt out, now you can finally take the thing out and adjust it to the height that you want. I adjust mine pretty high because I lean the bike over pretty far. Alright, everything's adjusted. I've got the front pedal tweaked to the angle I want and the distance I want with boots. I want it to be out a little bit further. This should then bend back at an angle, so in case you hit the road, it's not going straight up and it's not going straight back. It also gives you plenty of power pushing down and that way. So I've got it adjusted to the top left setting, well, furthest back highest. So for canyon riding this should be a lot better. I just hope that that stupid knuckle down here doesn't scrape like it has in the past. We will see. I think the Öhlins raised the rear a bit, so we'll see how this goes. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side and I'll be good to go.